So a couple of months ago, I went around Marika's house for a cup of tea and an hour of career-spanning storytelling. We start at the beginning with this chat from going to college in Brighton and then being picked up by Dirty Hit and signing with Transgressive, looking at her big picture of 10 years, 3 albums, and how she chops her vegetables. Her self-produced covers album is coming out this Friday. She talks about how she made that between 2 homes and where she's at with her career at the moment in general. You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. If you like this show, please let your friends know. That would be awesome. East London's Signature Brew have been brewing music-inspired beers since 2011. You can get your beers delivered over lockdown right to your door. All their beers are on signaturebrew.co.uk. And with the voucher code 101podcast, you can get 10% off of all orders. All right, so this is Marika Hackman on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Go well. Cheers.
Oh baby, every morning there are mountains to climb, taking all my time.
It's really strange, and I don't know what's going to happen to the whole live sector because it's going to be the last thing to come back. And you think about all the booking agents, all the people who work in venues and run venues, the venues themselves, all crew members, all sound engineers, like roadies, that whole world, like lighting engineers. No one's allowed to do them.
What I found playing in bands before is that when we got a booking agent, I found that I had this weird level of responsibility that I didn't have before that, and it gave me the wiggles sometimes.
Right.
Has that happened with you at all?
No.
Is it because you're close with them and you chat to them?
Not even. I mean, yeah, close enough, but it's kind of, I just feel like that's always been a part of the world that's kind of just taken care of, and I don't feel like a pressure because of that, which is nice, I suppose. But that's probably the way I just kind of came into it, just rolled in. Yeah,
I mean, because this podcast is about how people, roll into it and then roll through it, maybe roll out of it.
Yeah.
And it is like a thing, £50 support fees is never going to change. Yeah. So that kind of financial aspect of it, that's what I kind of want to dig into and get basically stories from those moments where either you're like, oh, this is actually working,
or it's not, which is more the story of my life. But really, perseverance is the story of my life. So or my career, not maybe my life so much. My whole shtick, like from when I first started in the kind of music industry, aged 19, I suppose, was like I wanted to have a long career. Like that was the aim. It's like I want to have a long career. Anything moving like in the right direction at whatever pace is good enough for me. Like I don't want to have a big spike and then a big like burst into something and then a burnout. So with that in mind, it's kind of that thing of like just sticking with it, and as long as I'm able to do it, like I have to keep pushing. But it's a lot of talking myself back into making records or talking myself back into going on tour, because it's like I've been doing it for 10 years and it grinds you down, which sounds like such a cliche, but it really fucking does. And it's like there's a very much a view from the outside that if you get played on the radio, and if you play at Glastonbury, and if you go on tours, and if you tour America, right, you've made it, you must be rolling in it, and like you're a rock star, and it's wild, and that is like categorically untrue. And I think particularly like if you're a solo artist who has to tour with a band, I mean the costs are just like astronomical, and I've never earned off a tour.
Really?
I've been doing this for 10 years. I've never earned off a tour. I can break even on a UK tour. Like, wow. That's it. So, but I still have a career, and I'm still making records, and I still, I've put out three albums alongside another like 4 or 5 EPs in and around all of that. So yeah, it's just a really strange industry, because it's like the longer you've been doing it, like however hard you work, in most careers, you work at something for a long time and you work really hard and you move up and you get a promotion or you get a pay rise, and you're kind of moving through
any
this
other
world.
job, right?
Yeah, but this one, there is no like sum of like hard work plus like time spent equals success and like monetary kind of safety. You just don't know where you stand at any time.
I mean, guitar music in general. I don't know anything about the electronic world.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, because obviously I think with more like the more electronic side of music, especially when you get into more like the DJ side of things or the production DJ mixed kind of stuff, which is like what my brother used to do.
Oh, right.
When you're touring that, and like playing big club nights and events and things like that, all you do is rock up with a laptop or like a USB or whatever. So your costs are minimal, like so minimal. And also the kind of hospitality within that whole circuit is like off the chain. Like they will put you in amazing hotels, you get huge fees.
But it makes me think like, why, I mean, less people, it's not like less people are listening to guitar music.
No.
Is it? I mean, going to the Astoria 13 years, where did you grow up?
Oh, I'm south of London, like, as in south of London, not South London.
Would you grow up going to gigs around your area? Were there
Not
bands
really. It was kind of middle of nowhere vibes. I mean, I went to like some bigger shows and stuff. Like, I had an interview the other day, and it's like my first actual gig that I went to, I think, was Destiny's Child. But that was just, they came to like Portsmouth or something, like Southsea, one of the big like venues there, and I went and watched them play. So that kind of stuff, like, or like mum and dad might take us to something like once in a while.
And those tickets would be like 40 quid, 50 quid,
Yeah.
which is obviously like what £100 is now almost.
Yeah,
It feels like
completely.
that.
Yeah.
But tickets have gone up. I mean, I'm not just Glastonbury. I was thinking £10 tickets to the Astoria is now probably 15.
Also, you don't want to like push fees too high as well, because I think people don't. It's this worry that people won't pay to come and see a show.
Right.
So as soon as it goes over like 15 quid, people start going, "Ooh, it's a bit steep."
Yeah, because you're going to spend 50 quid on beers.
Yeah.
Because Tuborgs are fucking £6.
That's the most
something.
disgusting beer.
Yeah, gross, aren't they?
Oh, that's giving me like festival
Oh, no.
shivers. It's like it's an interesting one, because it's a conversation I've been having a lot recently is like about the devaluing of artists and the devaluing of music itself, and it's become this commodity within this industry that is just like trading off of predetermined like consumer ideals. Like, so what everyone is already listening to is what everyone wants to play. So you have the consumer dictating what's being pushed to them because of all of the ways that algorithms work.
Right.
And it's like there's actually nowhere in the middle for that for music itself or artists to have an identity that kind of punch through unless they get sucked into a whirlwind of a certain kind of algorithm.
If you're an artist, you obviously want to go, you want to progress.
Yeah.
And the way to progress is finding new fans. And so you kind of accidentally get brought into that kind of thing, like, oh, we should be doing this, not that. And you don't have someone like sounding like King Crimson right now, probably because of that.
Yeah, because it's like it's probably like too niche and it's not going to have the same interaction, and because labels aren't going to sign you unless you've already got a lot of Spotify stats. Like if your Spotify stats are really good, they'll sign you, or like if you've had a big YouTube hit, and it's like everyone's just looking at the consumer first and not going with what they actually believe in and what they want to push because they think it's something new, it's exciting. I mean, that's a generalization, and also there are boundaries that get crossed with that, like in terms of like the Venn diagram where it's kind of that sweet spot that really works. But it's very frustrating. Like one of the things I find really frustrating about Spotify in particular is on your artist page, the top 10 tracks that come up are the ones that are just being listened to the most currently. So again, anything that's driven towards your page, any traffic that's taken towards your page, those are the ones they're still going to click on because they're being listened to the most right now. But that's not what I want people to listen to the most right now. I want them to listen to my latest release the most. I want to put that at the top of my page. That's the record I've just come out with. I'm trying to promote it, but Spotify doesn't let you do that.
Well, you've done quite well with your records sounding different. That.
They're very different.
Do you kind of recognise that? Do you see like you kind of gotten away with it in a way?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, I think I'm very happy that I've done it that way because I've always set out to do that, and I think it keeps it exciting for me, and it makes...
And for the listener, it keeps it exciting for me, everyone else. It's great.
Like, no one knows what I'm going to do next is quite a nice thing. It's also quite nice for me to kind of sit back and know that no one knows what I'm going to do next, so it takes the pressure off a bit. And I'm not really ever worried about, like, losing fans in that way because... people can always just listen back to the first record or the second record or whichever one connects with them the most. It's not like you remove music from people by releasing something that's different. It's funny how everyone seems to react like that, but they can still listen to it. So yeah, that's kind of part of how I imagined having a long career, is also kind of like shaking it up and not pandering to the listener, because like as soon as you put that in your head when you're writing, it's so destructive. It's like awful. In fact, I'm writing album number 4 right now, and I'm finding it very difficult to pull myself out of that headspace. I think it might be something to do with like having not been able to play live shows, like meet people, connect in that way, and kind of assert myself in a physical presence, like because it makes you kind of feel more confident, I suppose.
Especially in the lyrics, because on the third record, it was, I've read in a few interviews how you know, you spent that sort of best part of a decade, maybe kind of keeping your cards close.
Yeah.
And then the third record is like there's so many turns of phrases there.
Yeah.
You know, like I didn't know what venereal meant before
Yes.
that. I was like, that's so fucking good. And you know, BDE is, you know, it's a classic. You know, I think that's that. And I wonder if there's a kind of mystery to that.
Yeah.
I think because especially in the world of social media as well. Well, I think, you know, again, your social media is like strong, I feel.
I keep it quite quiet and then I just like hit something.
Right.
Punchy, I mean, like.
And is that something you kind of have to think about? I mean, artists have to think about that now, don't they? It's part of the job.
Yeah. I mean, I was told when I was 20 that I had to get an iPhone because I had to get Instagram because I was a musician and I had to do that. Whereas up until I was 20, I had a Sony Ericsson little crappy phone, which I was perfectly happy with.
Yeah.
I've never ever wanted to have any of these things, but I understand. It is a kind of necessary evil, and I think I missed the boat. I think if I'd started releasing music maybe 4 years earlier, I could have then been one of those artists that doesn't do that because you've already kind of established yourself.
Yeah.
But it's too late. Once you start doing it on your first EPs, then you're screwed. You've got to stick with it. You can't just delete it all.
Right. And I don't know anyone who's an artist who can get someone else to do that for them.
Yeah. I think people also, like, if you're going to do it properly, because people can tell when it's like management teams like releasing stuff on behalf in the voice of the art, and it's kind of people have all of this stuff because they're looking to connect, which is really grim in a lot, like if you think about it. But if you're then kind of just giving quite like sterile, like
yeah, but you can smell
content.
the bullshit, can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
You can even if you really don't know that person at all, you're a bit. I think we're the similar age, like 28, 29, and I wonder if people who are 5 years younger than us, just like their language in the internet, it's probably so much better than us.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone can smell bullshit online, it will be fucking Gen Z will be all over it in a heartbeat. I think, I think we're kind of the generation that's got a bit muddled up in it all without having it kind of as part of our DNA, like growing into it. Because
when you were 20, what were you doing around then? You did an art course in Brighton, right?
Yes, so that was when I was 19, I did my art foundation in Brighton.
It's quite easy to kind of brush over those early years.
Yeah.
You know, I think to a lot of fans, a band they like or an artist they like went to art school and, it just happened. But how easy really was it?
It was kind of emotionally tough. It's funny, I kind of always knew when I was a kid that I would be a musician. And not in a kind of arrogant way, I just had a feeling the whole time. And I knew it's something I really wanted to do. But I also really enjoyed doing art, and that felt in terms of like academic stuff and carrying that on and doing a degree, felt more appealing to me than doing anything music based, because I'm kind of always just got on with music on my own and quite private about it. And so I did my art foundation and I realised I didn't really want to go to uni, and I kind of thought, if I want to be a musician, I should probably start it now. I was already doing gigs, like I started doing gigs when I was 16, so I was like playing the odd show in either London or Brighton or whatever.
Was that as Marika Hackman?
Yeah, like
Great.
really, really old stuff.
Yeah.
Like songs that have never
and booking your own shows through MySpace?
MySpace, yeah, exactly. So it would all be through MySpace or Facebook or sometimes SoundCloud. And then...
Did that come natural to you, reaching out to people and being like, hey, I do this?
It was actually, not to sound incredibly smug, but it was the other way around most of the time. So it would be people contacting me and being like, oh, here comes a housemate. People contacting me to ask if I could play a club night or whatever. I mean, they were all like small shows. So yeah, that was kind of where I was at, and I basically decided to not go to university and just take a leap of faith, and it just worked. It paid off. It kind of like my parents moved down to Devon, so I was kind of pulled way out into the countryside. Like everyone else was going to university around me, and I had no plan, and it was like very daunting, and I felt pretty bleak for a while about that. Following them down to this new place, aged like 20, where you're not going to like make new pals in the countryside. It just like doesn't happen. And yeah, it was a really weird time. And I was trying to get jobs in like restaurants and pubs locally and stuff. But unfortunately, I didn't get any jobs. But I was still playing gigs. And what happened? Burberry got interested after I posted a video a friend of mine was doing. It was called the Bristol Couch. And he was just doing videos of people on this big red inflatable couch playing acoustic sessions. It was
Johnny
a really
Flynn
big thing. He might
I
have.
think he did a London Burberry thing.
Oh, so yeah, he was doing Burberry stuff, but this was like a separate thing that a friend was doing that then Burberry saw, liked, and they basically, I did like those music session things that they do. Then I met another guy that was there who was with another band. He was a manager. His name is Jamie Oborn. He started Dirty Hit. He was there. We started chatting. He really liked the track I was playing. He got in contact. We started having some meetings. At the same time, through Johnny Flynn, Transgressive, he played them some of my music, and then they booked me to support him on a show, which was amazing because like I already knew him anyway as a person, but have always just been a really big fan of his. So that was a really nice moment. He's
I think the Row and the Writ. It's just,
I fucking love.
I can't believe how good it is.
Yeah, that's like my favourite Johnny Flynn song.
Yeah.
And then off the back of then supporting Johnny, him kind of talking me up like an absolute legend to Transgressive, they booked me for another show. All came and watched it, and so then by this point I had Transgressive who wanted to publish me, which was amazing. So then I had a publishing deal on the table, and then I had management coming in from Jamie All on Red / Dirty Hit coming in to like put out records, and this was all kind of by the next like February after I finished art college in like June or whatever. So I had that like 7 months of it kind of everything being up in the air and just like chugging along.
And presumably you didn't have time to do anything else. You didn't have time to look for odd jobs.
No, yeah, so I wasn't getting any like stopgap pub jobs, and then suddenly it became very apparent to me that like it wasn't going to necessarily be something that was the priority.
Yeah.
And obviously getting a publishing deal, great, because I've had advances from labels through the years with every album I've released, but I've really just been living off my publishing for like this whole time.
And how does that, because publishing it's like syncing, right? So getting in TV shows, movies.
Yeah.
But what's the other side of it?
Well, it's basically, I mean, you get money in advance, much like a label would give, that then, you know, you have your margin split about like after you've paid a certain amount back and all of that. But their job is to try and get you onto like adverts and get you big syncs and movies and things like that, like Netflix stuff or whatever. And in the meantime, they're also taking a cut of the royalties that you get from anything where your music is, anything you've written is played, so radio play and things like that. But obviously, I also still get a cut of PRS, and they've also paid for me to basically live and write. So it kind of works.
And that's the fascinating side of it. I think not many people know that there is that, just exactly what these conversations I'm doing are about, is like the living side of it.
Yeah.
So that must have been such a huge vote of confidence that Transgressive, and there's that lovely Transgressive YouTube documentary.
Oh yeah.
It's like the 25-minute long one.
Yeah.
Blind Avon, you know, young band, and you can kind of just see the people that run the label. They're like, we like it, we're just going to...
They're a really good bunch of people, and they actually manage me now. So like they've been managing me for the last like 2 record cycles I've put out, and still are, hopefully, unless I get a phone call this afternoon. And they're just, I mean, the way they run their label, I haven't, like, I'm not so much part of the label side of things, so I'm publishing and management, but like I just think they are really like incredible in their vision that they have with artists, and also how much they like stick to just what they believe in and don't pander to the industry around them. They never use like a blueprint from another artist to stick on another one and be like, well, this worked with them, like, well, this worked with Foles, so we'll do the same with you, or whatever.
Right.
Like every single thing is like thought out very specifically with whoever they're working with, and they like, they're just a group of people all with like that know all their different skill sets, and they use them really well. Like I can't really like big them up like enough.
I mean, that vote of confidence signing that publishing deal, did that have this huge knock-on effect for you in the way that you saw yourself?
Yeah, well, I was like, okay, here we go. It was like that thing, and again, not to sound arrogant. It was just this very like quiet self-assurance that I had that I would be doing this, and so things like that, like having a publishing deal coming in, having management interested, and then suddenly a label behind me. It was like, and it all happened quite quickly. It was like, yeah, here's the beginning. Off we go. Like it's happened now, and now this is my job, and that's exactly what I foresaw for myself, which feels very strange because it's like, maybe can I see into the future? But it also feels good. Yeah. That's me. Like, but yeah, no, it's it was really nice. Nice is like an understatement. It was just a really it made me feel very safe to like just have that. Like you said, it's a vote of confidence, and it was kind of like, here I am, like fresh out of like an art foundation, like only out of school for like a year, and
20, you think you know everything.
Yeah, but I'm 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
I do have to say, I do think that, like, as a teenager growing into now a late 20-year-old human being, like, I have always been very much just like, I think my parents instilled in me an attitude of, you don't know any, like, jack shit.
Yeah.
So, like, just sit down and get taught. And it's like, okay. So I think...
Is your brother older?
Yeah, I'm the youngest in my entire family, so I have had to just, like, also just sit down and be taught. But yeah, which is, I think it's a really nice way to be there. I'm really happy that it was like that, because I've learned so much along the way. But it's never felt like I've felt challenged by that learning curve. It's just felt like a welcome thing.
I mean, at 20, how realised was your vision, looking back now?
I mean, I've always been quite clear in my head about, with every, like, project and every album that's come along, I've kind of known what I wanted to do with it. And like I said, my vision was always just kind of like, I just want to keep on doing it and be able to and live off it. You know, I've got to make a living, otherwise I can't do it. I think if my personality was shining through on the earlier records, it would seem like I was like some goth that didn't come out of, like, my bedroom ever and was, like, super emo and didn't talk to anyone and was obsessed with, like, rotting flesh and like blood, which is, like, not true. I think it was a case of, like, just strong imagery and conjuring up very strong, like, sensory imagery. So it was like bringing up, like, smells and visuals and feelings and kind of fears and things like that alongside music that was kind of pushing harmonic boundaries in a weird way. So it's all quite, like, trippy and strange and dark, and it was definitely, like, flexing a darkness in me. It was also expressing sort of romantic sad sides of me, but then it all in very, like, metaphorical ways. And that's the big difference, is that now there's the sense of humour is also still there in the first few, like, EPs and stuff. Like, I'm making it really dark, but, like, maybe the music's a bit more upbeat and I'm kind of making these weird, like, word plays about shit. But cut to now, and it's like just having a conversation really with me. It's just, like, upfront and direct, and I'm just talking about stuff that I think is important to hear, you know. I always want to sing in a way that I feel like I would want to hear something sung to me. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
The actual life, I'm trying not to say lifestyle, the actual kind of day-to-day element of being an artist, I feel like tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like there's a lot of, like, hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
So when things happen, they happen real quick.
Yeah.
And then there's this, call it a lull, I don't know, whatever. Doldrums.
Yeah.
Great word.
Thank you.
And has that ever, like, panicked you? That
It's literally what I'm feeling like right now. I normally deal with it really well, where I see days spent doing nothing, in inverted commas, you know, sitting at my desk staring into space, or even, like, just going for a long walk and kind of getting out and trying to move around. I see those as very much all part of the creative process. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, like, if in the next 3 weeks I've written a song, that was all part of, like, that journey to get to that point. So, like, it's just another day spent doing something, even if it feels like you're doing nothing. So I try and bring it into as an active part of it, even though it feels very inactive. But
because you need those experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a bit like, it's like the thing I'm struggling with at the moment. Also, I do keep forgetting that I've just made a covers record, and I did actually do, like, I have actually been creative and have made something quite recently.
Right, we haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah, that's the latest thing. And I'm feeling like at the moment just, and I think a lot of people, I think this is more to do with the year that we've been having, but just complete kind of inertia. Like, I just have no drive, and I've been writing bits, and I do have stuff, like, there's some stuff that's, like, ready to go, and there's other stuff that's, like, ideas that I've recorded, but I feel like I get panicked because the further away I get from having written something that I really loved, to me, the harder it is to, like, break down that wall. It's like if it's like ice that's building up, and, like, every time I write a record, I'm chipping and chipping and chipping, and by the time I finish that record, the wall is so thin, it's like everything's coming across, like, real fucking easy, and I can just take it and I just get it. And then when I have a little bit of time off, I'm touring, it's like it starts freezing back up again. And it's just this like, I start getting this panic after it's been like a year and a half or whatever, where it's like, God, I'm going to have to start chipping again. And the chipping is the frustrating part because it's bits and bobs, it's stuff here and there, it's like flashes of light, you're kind of getting it, but it's not this like amazing just rush of like creative flow.
Working with Transgressive, how often are they checking in with you? And is that something you can discuss with them? And are they like a, like sort of a best friend in that sense?
Yeah, they're really good at that. Tim, who's at Transgressive, he is sort of like my creative, like bouncing off guy. And I feel very like, I don't feel scared to say like, I'm really struggling to write at the moment or whatever. And he's kind of read everything and heard everything and seen everything that's ever existed, so he'll send me over like albums I should listen to or like a book I should read, and he's like really good because it takes my brain out of the kind of the focus on the draining of it, like it sits it back more into like, let's fill this back up again, like let's feed you before I try and sit down and kind of like work you, which is something I always forget to do, and actually like sitting down and reading is like a really good thing. But again, when I'm in the middle of writing an album and I've got like 7 tracks under my belt, like I'll be reading like a maniac as well at the same time, but it's like everything switches off and then everything switches on. There's not really any middle ground.
Are there particular genres of books that you lean towards?
No, just kind of anything really. Yeah. I mean, I like my tastes across everything. So it's like music, film and books and everything is like, I love pure trash.
Yeah.
And then I also love kind of like stretching my brain a bit and being challenged and kind of like maybe going into like places of emotion with stuff that make me feel uncomfortable. But I also love to like, sit back and read like whatever, some like bestseller that everyone's reading. I also just get that like FOMO thing of like, well, if everyone's reading it, then I want to know what all the fuss is about. Like I have read all of the 50 Shades of Grey books because I was like, these suck. There are 3 of them. I read all 3 of them. They all suck.
Really?
But at least I know that because I actually, not because I'm just being a snob and going out like, she's reading 50 Shades of Grey. Like I have read those books and they all categorically suck, and I can say that because I've read them. So like, I like to just like absorb trash, and I can read fast. So it's kind of like eating.
You read fast.
Yeah.
That's a trick. And you talked about sort of going for walks or doing things just to get like, well, I'm sort of putting my 2 cents in it to get experiences.
Yeah.
Has there been time throughout the years? Because I mean, 10 years is a long, long time.
Yeah.
Were there times throughout the years where you thought, okay, I need to get some kind of stimulation from doing other things?
Yeah. I mean, I always have constant thoughts about like potential other things I could be doing that might also be like just a bit kinder to myself.
Yeah.
Because in terms of like going out and finding stimulus, I also just do find that quite hard. Like often like walking and swimming and things like that to just kind of calm my brain down and just like relax, de-stress, like try and keep anxiety at bay and things like that. Just get the body moving. But when I'm kind of thinking about other things I could be doing, like I would love to do something that was creative is much more logic based. So it's things like carpentry or like cooking and things like that, where you can have a creative flair, but ultimately like it is like scientific or mathematical, and it's rooted in just making stuff really well and really perfectly. Like I'm a freak when it comes to like chopping vegetables. Like I'm like so anal about it.
Amazing.
Like it's like
what's your
tiny
concept?
Cubes, just like tiny little cubes, and like they have to be perfect. Because it's like if you do something good from the bottom up, the payoff at the end is going to be so much bigger than if you just like try and make it better in the last 10 minutes. Like it's all about that long game, and that's kind of like my career. It's like every little thing is just step by step and making sure each one of those steps like I'm really, really happy with, and that if I was ever like to go back a few steps, I could say happily like, yes, I'm really proud of that. And
I think you can hear that in records as well, such as yours and such as other great records, in the way that on the 3rd or 5th listen, you'll be like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time.
I love that in records where it's like, I love it when you listen to a record and you kind of feel like, okay, yeah, there's like 2 or 3 tracks in here, I'm going to cane them pretty hard. Like they're usually the singles, the kind of those immediate hitters. And then you'll have it on, it will start kind of like, it'll go into the track afterwards or something, and you kind of just run with it again. And then it's like,
track.
Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, and it's like, if you can have a record that basically keeps you fed for like 6 months, because even if you're playing it on repeat, because every single time like you're hearing something different and a song you've either been playing like loads and loads and loads, or like a whole brand new song that's like you've got to enjoy. It's amazing. It's like a full on, like that's to me the purpose of it, like completely.
Similar to books as well. I mean, you can read a book that's like, you kind of you're wading through the density maybe a quarter of the way through and you're like, where is this going?
Yeah.
Secret History by Donna Tartt is one of my favourites for that.
Great book.
Because you're like, is this good? And then you're like, at the end of it, you're like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And there's that little sort of touch and go confusion, kind of wading water in the middle.
Yeah. But then it starts that payoff when you like stick with it and you have put the groundwork in and you have read the first, like 300 pages and suddenly you're like, I'm into this now. Like, get it. It's great. It's awesome. And then you finish it, you're like, that was the best thing I ever read or like ever listened to or like ever ate. It's like, it's across everything. I just think that it just makes sense. Like you put in the work and you build the blocks up with like full intention and like just care from the start, like all the way, and then by the time you get to the end it's going to be 100 times better than if you just an extra 100% at in the last like 2 days of making something that's just going to be like putting cream on a poo.
Which I think some people try and get away with.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, definitely.
Have you always been thinking about a record? Have you always been like in the midst of just chipping away at that big ice block? Yeah,
pretty much. It's kind of like since I started like. So when I was just doing it on my own, like before I had any interest from anyone else anyway, I was always just writing songs just to kind of try it and like, because I enjoyed it as a pastime basically at home. And then obviously when people get involved and then it's like, okay, so what was it? The first thing was we're going to do a mini album. So I had 7 tracks and a couple of them I had already had written. So that was the first time I'd recorded anything, was that Iron Taste. And that was actually where I used up most of the songs I've been writing when I was like a teenager. So I recorded that, and then after that it's like, okay, now we want an EP. So, right, okay, I'll do another, got to write like 3 or 4 tracks.
That was the kind of label choice.
Yeah, but it's like, you sit down and you work out.
Work together.
Like what journey you want to go on. And in a way, having it defined into like sections is quite useful, rather than just sitting and being like, I need to write. And it's kind of, it was just that into like 2 EPs, and it was like, now you got to write an album. And then it was like, now you got to write another album, and now you got to write another album. And it's like, then I go and tour, and then I come home and I sit at my desk and I try and write another album, and then I go and record it. And it's quite like it's just a cycle that goes round and round again. Can you see where you're going for the next one? I mean, I know you said that you're sort of feeling a bit lost right now, but when you put out the third one, was it a bit like, I know where I'm going to go next? I had some ideas and I think they still stand. And I think working on the covers record as well has given me a nice insight into some more production techniques and things like that I'll be using maybe as a songwriting tool coming into this next one. But like, we'll just see. At the moment I'm really just focusing on like just getting the core of some like solid songs down, and then seeing what happens, trying not to get too lost in a concept before it's fully realised it for itself. But I kind of know the lessons I've learned and where I want to go with it. Have you had many of those where you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that? What, like on a record? Yeah, or maybe live or a working relationship, or not to smear anyone's name, but it's just experiences. Pull that a scroll. No, I mean, this is such a boring answer because anyone listening to this is going to be like, give me the dirt. But I really try not to have regrets, and it kind of really works in the industry, not in life. Like, I have regrets splattered all over my personal life, but like it's it's again, it's just that thing of like welcoming the learning curve and not being like that kind of like bullheaded like getting angry like if I fuck up or I did something slightly wrong. It's like, no, cool, that was, again, it's just part of the journey. It's like a day where I couldn't write, but like it's just part of it. So like, there's stuff, I mean, that I always, when it comes to like listening to mixes after I've made records, I'll listen to them and I'll just be like, it sounds good enough to me, like this is fine. And I'm actually probably don't go into them as hard as I could. And then it's like, maybe like if I listen back to a record like a year later, I'll be like, oh damn, I should have like highlighted that bit or got that sorted out. But that is the only shit that like I would notice anyway, so that's why I just let it go. You could sit with something for so long and it's just not worth it. I think the getting angry side of it is seems like a real smart thing
to do, especially as you're in the first decade of your ideally 4 or 5 decade span
Fingers crossed.
career.
We'll see how long I could last.
But is that something that you think about as well? You're like, look, I'm still new to this. I'm still...
Yeah. I feel like I still have a lot to learn. And I think my journey is like going to be littered with like road bumps coming up, and that more to do with my own emotional stamina and like ego. Those are going to be my problems. Like,
those are going to hold you.
Those will be things that probably like get in the way of me being able to focus on just being purely creative. Like it's all the noise.
Yeah,
it's quite difficult, and just the stamina. Like the older I'm getting, like it's just a bit harder to keep really fresh and excited about everything and want to keep pushing through. But it's like I know that when I write a new song, I have like it's like a drug. Honestly, it's like the like hit after you've written a song is insane, and it's like you just feel amazing. And I know that once I'm back in that, it's just been like I say, it's ideas flying around, but I haven't had that eureka moment for like I need it. Yeah. I need my fix, and it's just like when that comes back in, it will be probably this rush, you know, and that'll be amazing. And also like obviously I miss playing live, like that gives you a really great feeling too, and like seeing people physically in front of you and like meeting people, and it's just the longest I've gone without playing a show, I think. So,
and I wonder if, I mean, slightly staying true to the podcast, does touring feel like the more job side of it?
Yes and no. It's like it's the more like regimented side of it, and where, you know, you have a job to do that's very clean cut, and actually that's why I really like it. Like you have a schedule. You have to be, you know, meet in the lobby at 9, like drive for 3 hours, like get in, load in, like set up, sound check, to play the show, like load down, get out, everything like that. So it's just like it's very cut and dried, and that's really nice compared to like pulling things out of thin air. But then in a way, the emotionally taxing side of the creative part does also actually make it feel more like a job, because that's more draining and more tiring. So they both have like different pros and cons. And
when so many bands go on tour to get paid.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case with you.
Well, it's just one of those things where like I think touring is a really lucrative thing for a lot of people, like once you hit a certain bracket. But if you're just basically nudging that bracket with your nose like the whole time, it's quite expensive, especially when you start doing European touring and American touring, and if your label can't fully like fund an entire tour, you know, so then you're paying out of your own pocket. I mean, you're kind of paying out of your own pocket if the label's funding it anyway, but like you're literally paying out of your own like money set aside to live off to be able to go on tour, you know. It's like, and loads of people don't realise that, like I pay to go on tour. Like,
are we talking like train fares to go get the van in Watford?
Oh, it's all of it. I mean, it's not, it's like if you think about, if I was touring Europe with my band, like if we're going to break it down in quite like a boring way, but here we go. It's like so we'll have obviously a van hire. So for every single day of that tour, let's say it's 4 weeks. So that's like a lot of money. Yeah. There'll be hotel rooms for every single night. We do two hotel rooms every single night. It's girls in one room, boys in the other room. There's also the day rate for every single person working for me on that tour. So that's 5 people's daily wage that I'm also paying. There's per diems that are paid out to everyone as well on top of that. There's probably a bit of gear hire going on at some point, potentially. Like, it's just a lot. All the fuel spent driving across the whole of Europe. Like, you can just keep going and going and going.
Yeah.
It's like, it just all like completely rolls up on itself, and the fees that you'll be getting, especially if it's a support tour, are going to be like way down. Touring's
still the best way to get your music heard, is it?
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, I don't really know anymore, to be honest.
Right.
It's just so like, I think the internet has obviously like made everything pretty wild. Like a great way of getting your music heard is like people hearing it online, because you're not paying for that to happen. But like the most rewarding way of having people hear your music is to like play it to them. Also, I think people really appreciate it when they can like come and see you and like be in a room together and hear things. And like a lot of people do just go to gigs for artists they haven't even heard of to like hear for them for the first time, which I think is really cool. Like I think it's a really nice way of discovering new music. And I think like when you're going to like small towns in the UK or like cities in Europe, which people don't tour so much, like the way people respond is like just so like excited to have people coming through and like actually playing their towns, like how I kind of would have been, you know, like Destiny's Child are coming to Southampton. Like, what the fuck? I
love, you know, I think it's never really depleted in my life from going to a show, and whether I know the band or I don't know the band, just sort of studying the musicianship. And studying each person. And then it's great seeing a band that you love and you know really well, and it might be your umpteenth time seeing them. And it's great to see those songs evolve. And just in those ways, in the way that songs do when you're on tour a lot.
Completely. They turn into completely different beasts. Like songs change so much from playing them now. Like the way that I sing them will change. Like my intonation will change and stuff like that because I start kind of like playing around with different ideas.
Some people don't like that.
I know. I don't do it too much.
Don't look at the comments.
I try and keep it pretty similar. But we do like to like, you know, a record's a record, a show's a show. And like I like doing stuff like segues into different songs and like having little wig out sessions and things that aren't necessarily on the record, because I think it's kind of just adds something a bit more special. And I don't want them to sound, you know, like exactly how they do on the record. They sound live, like you can't really achieve that unless you're like a pop star using loads of tracks. So.
And I feel like, I mean, do you feel like you have a duty to think about that, or is that something you can just be like, oh, I don't want to think too much about it? It's taking out the, you know, the intuitiveness of it, you know, the immediacy of it.
What, thinking about
changing songs of songs evolving?
I kind of do think about it. I'm quite meticulous. I'm not, and I think it's partly to do with my maybe lack of confidence in terms of like my skills as a guitarist, but like I'm not someone who's ever really been able to like improvise much, and I don't practice improvising either, which is probably something I should do. So much like in the way that when I'm writing and producing and arranging and things like that, like it's very meticulous, like the way that I chop vegetables. It's kind of like, so when I'm thinking about the live set, I'm kind of working out like how we can like squish these two songs together, what's going to work well, or like how we strip something back and like build it up again. And like it's like when we're all in the room together and we're kind of throwing some ideas around, then it turns into a bit more natural, but I certainly always have a backbone of kind of knowing where I want it to go. And
has that changed with the producing? I mean, you said earlier that you sort of picking up a few production tips. How did you make the covers record?
So that was all on my own.
Really?
At home. Yeah.
Amazing. Upstairs here?
Split between here and my parents' house.
Great.
So I was down there for a few weeks during lockdown, and then I was here finishing it off. And yeah, just me on Logic on my computer and with a few toys and a mic. And
did you know Logic before that, or was it something?
No,
cool.
so I like have been using. I mean, obviously, everyone starts on GarageBand when they're a kid. So I used to make demos on GarageBand, and I got Logic later on when I was actually starting to take music a bit more seriously. So I've always worked on Logic. I've always recorded my own demos and kind of just like built them up. So for the first album, I would like do quite built up demos and then take them in with Charlie Andrew, and we'd just strip it back and then he would build up again in the studio. So it's quite like it's really fun because there's a lot of serendipitous kind of like exciting stuff that happens that you get that satisfaction kind of again and again and again every single day you go into the studio. And then with the second record, I worked with Charlie again on that one, because it was a live record working with the Big Moon as the backing band, I had to then start to really think about arrangements and things like that before we got into the studio so we could rehearse and take it in. So it kind of stepped it up a notch in terms of how much I was doing prep work before going in.
Presumably your like role of band leader, was that the first time that happened?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I'd gone on the road with the band, but like that, it's already kind of done. Whereas this was like a band leader kind of having to be like, guys, let's rehearse, let's get in. And obviously, I mean, they're my friends. They're like really close friends of mine. So it wasn't like, guys. It was a very enjoyable experience. And they were all also, I wanted them to bring stuff to the table as well. Like as much as I'm a control freak, like I picked them because I really like the way they play music. So, so that was really fun. And that gave me a lot of confidence in terms of arrangements and things like that. So coming into album 3, which was a co-produce with David Wrench. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I co-produced that record. And actually, if you listen to the demos, it was a case of this time around having had these like really built up demos. So like I've written all the drum parts, like everything's in there, all done. And it was basically going to the studio. And unlike Charlie, who would probably say, let's strip it back and work on it, David was just like, right, from the bottom up, we're just going to re-record like everything you've done, but just properly, like not in a home studio. And then would add some stuff together at the end, and he had ideas about certain sounds and things like that. So, but it was like very much taking what I'd done at home and just polishing it and making it sound
So then
real.
what's his job as a producer there then?
So that his job as a producer there is basically finding the best ways of getting the sounds that I've kind of created already, but like not in a shit way. Like,
but it probably sounded all right.
Yeah, but not
Demos.
it's not like, you know, clear and punchy. And I went in being like, I want this to fucking like slap you around the face. I want it to be punchy, big. It needs to sound like crisp. It needs to sound like more polished than anything I've done. The rest was kind of grungy or like moody, and I want this to just be like bite you. So I come in and go, here's all my parts, but like, how are we going to do this? So his role then is like, well, I've got this amazing pedal. Let's get this synth out. Let's try this one. We need.
And it
to double
certainly
track
has
that.
those sounds where you're like, you wonder if a part like that would be grungy on a demo. I mean, I guess you don't really listen to records like that, but thinking about it now, it does have this kind of not electronic feel, but do you know what I mean? It's somewhere in the between.
Yeah. I think also what was interesting with that record is I had a MIDI keyboard at my disposal for the first time. So I actually was working a lot more on like parts, but not on like nice synths as well. So that's where David was really useful, because I had these parts going on and then he could make them sound really good. But yeah, it's kind of like bridging that gap, because it's like kind of gnarly guitar parts, but then there's like these kind of like French poppy kind of like string parts and kind of these crazy drum rhythms going on, and it was just gelling it all together. And he was obviously a huge part of like really making it stick.
And did you learn some things from that? Did that make you think, like, in terms of the next original full length?
Yeah, I think I was kind of like, this worked really well. That's generally been my feeling from anyone I've worked with, like Charlie and David, and just kind of musicians and stuff along the way. Just when it feels like a success, it's like, it's maybe not so much being like, I learned X, Y, and Z, but it's like, oh, cool, we achieved this. And that included all this stuff that I can't really like, you know, pinpoint out everything to list. But I think it was a big confidence boost, doing a co-production and like feeling confident enough to actually like put my name to that, which is nice.
I mean, quite often growing up, I certainly didn't really know what a producer did.
Yeah.
And even sometimes now, I'm not sure.
I mean, it's quite blurry, to be fair. Like, it can mean so many different things for every different artist. It
Vibe
can mean
bringer.
something. It can be vibe bringer. It could be like someone who's literally reconstructing your whole song and like making the whole thing, and you come in and do a top line afterwards. That's still the producer. Or it's someone who's just, you know, like literally like being like, this sounds cool, let's hit record, and making that choice for you.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's like, it's a huge span of like what that can mean.
So did the covers record feel like a bit of a Brave New World, knowing that it wasn't a demo, that it was going to be put out? I mean, did you know that it was going to be put out as a record?
Yeah. I knew it was going to be put out, and it was like this thing of, I know I can do this, but it's weird not having that final bridge with someone holding my hand going over it, where I'm like, because I can fuck around here all I want and make a demo upstairs and just like flesh it all out, make loads of parts and stuff, and then I'll be like, this is just me having fun, because ultimately like I'm going to take it into the studio and someone else is going to sit there and say, these bits work, this bit doesn't, let's redo that, and it's like, cool, now I feel safe. Whereas this time it was like, everything I'm choosing is the choice, and that's that. So like, that is quite a scary thought, but I kind of got over it pretty quickly, to be fair. I was more just like, then I just got lost in having fun again.
Things might happen in the studio one day that would never, it feels like it would never happen any other day. So having that kind of like weird kind of pressure over you, that, you know, that kind of...
But actually, what was really good about it, because I have found, like both with when I was even like at art school and just musically, is when you have parameters that you have to work within, that obviously that breeds like a whole new kind of creativity, which I find really useful, because I find the blank page syndrome really stressful.
Yeah.
And so knowing that like I wasn't taking it into the studio, so I couldn't have live drums, because like I didn't have enough mics to like mic up a kit, so couldn't have live drums. My vocals were going to have to just be like how they were. I was going to have to edit them, like, which is just quite stressful. So they were all going to be pretty rough and ready. Like, there wasn't going to be going into a nice vocal booth. The amount of takes I had to do on just like a single vocal line, because someone would be drilling next door. There's these guys on this side.
You said that thing.
Or there would be like a bird, like at my parents' house, that was just really fucking loud. Or like something, like my brother like working downstairs on a Zoom call, and it'd just be like, for fuck's sake. Like, so that's all. It was just like logistics of it. And like what was great was Roland sent me a drum machine. So it's like the TR8S, which is like... got kind of every sound from
That's the
any
one
of drum
you
machines.
see. That's like the ubiquitous. Is that like the drum machine, the classic one?
No, it's their latest like model, and it's like this
Cool.
big old just thing about this big.
Big.
And it's big, and it's got every single sound from like any of their like classic machines, and also
great.
like loads of new stuff, and you
Yeah.
can tweak them all and play with them. So that was amazing because I suddenly had this backbone for the record. So I knew I couldn't do live drums, but I had this new toy, and I've never really like done loads of drum machine stuff on, like I've dabbled with it, but not as like a whole sound for a record. And that was a really great way of like layering stuff up. So it actually became, I went into it thinking, oh, it'll probably just be like a lot of me with like an acoustic guitar and just like keep it quite organic and quite minimal. And then it actually went way more electronic because that was like the easier way of doing it. Actually, it was like, oh, I can get some drum sounds and I can put them in and they'll sound like this. And then, well, actually, I'm not going to put an acoustic guitar on this. Let's try like a synth sound. Let's try building it up in a different way, and just like lots of like chord bass and things like that. And it kind of gave me this palette for the entire thing that just made it really gel. Yeah, Grimes. That was like that's one of my favourite songs, but it was also
It's cool. I'd never listened to Grimes before.
hard to sing.
Really?
Yeah, it's so hard to sing.
Wow.
Her voice is like,
Yeah.
and mine's kind of like,
Did you bring it down then? I'm trying to.
yeah, like 2 tones, I think, or a
Right.
tone and a half.
And it took you a little while to transform those songs, stick with them.
Yeah, actually, that one. Sorry, some tea. That one was around for a long time. So before I actually decided to make this album, I had that one and Beyonce just like kicking around on my computer, but only like the first verse and then the chorus. And I liked what I had at the time that I made it, but that was a long time ago. So cut to like a year ahead or a year and a half, like further forward, and listening to it back when I was embarking on making this record, I was like, actually, I've moved on. I've changed.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I kind of stripped it back and like gutted it, and then tried to just, like with any good cover, it's about capturing like basically the essence of why you think it's a good song, but putting your stamp on it and like not letting them fight too much. You've got to find that perfect equilibrium of everything that makes it cool, like strip it down to like just those bits, and then try and like wrap a little bit of your own identity around it.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a good hour chatting.
Oh, great.
And I feel like the sort of format allows for like the time frame to be like dig into the smaller questions like producing and
yeah.
So thanks so much for making me privy.
My pleasure.
So they are.
Privy.
But that's cool. Yeah, thanks so much.
Sweet. Great.
So that was Marika Hackman on the show. Like I say, if you like this episode or you like this show, please pass it on, let people know about it. That would be amazing. Cheers. Here's Sparrer.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleak minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.